You see that he put some wax in his hair?
Yeah, he did his hair. You know, he wants to look presentable. It's okay.
That's for me. It's
Yeah.
for you.
It's not for me. It's for Evandro.
This is Justin Lesko, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu brown belt and former pro MMA fighter.
And I'm Mike Callahan. I'm a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu brown belt and a law enforcement officer.
Welcome to That Jiu Jitsu Podcast. So we're going to be lucky enough today that we're actually going to be joined by Evandro Nunes.
Yeah, he's the head instructor for GST. He travels the country with the sole purpose of educating law enforcement officers around the country on the importance of training, and their main goal is to teach the teachers. So an agency will send their defensive tactics instructors to GST, and then GST will teach the defensive tactics instructors, and then they in turn will go back to their agency and teach the curriculum to them. We touched on it a little bit last week, but Evandro is going to be able to, shed some more light on that. We're super stoked to have him on the show, and very grateful that he agreed to come on, especially in light of recent events.
So we're going to pick his brain for a little bit, and should hopefully be a fun call.
What's up, brother?
Thanks
Can you hear us? Yeah.
so much for coming on. I appreciate you chatting with us for a little bit.
100%. But
How's life out there for you, man? How's everything going?
Mike, everything's going very good, actually, bro. I know that there's a lot of stuff going on the planet right now, and the COVID and the incident with George, and the things are pretty hit up, especially here in LA. There's curfew like 3-4 days in a row. But I have this ability to look at things and see how I can influence positively, and not to allow unnecessary suffering to come inside of me, you see. So I'm always kind of looking for how can I help and how can I serve. And that energy, even though I see things and I am empathetic towards the challenges people are facing it, I'm also a positive force of solution, you see.
I love it.
Absolutely.
That's what I focus on. How is it over there for you guys?
We're getting through New York and Philly. There's some problems going on, but I think the worst of it's behind us.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. So guys, we're here with Evandro Nunes, who is the head instructor with Gracie Survival Tactics, which is one of the most practical training systems that is used in law enforcement today. Evandro's competed all around the world. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's out in Torrance at Gracie headquarters. I've had the privilege of attending 2 of the GST courses, which he was the instructor on. And overall, all around great guy, great teacher, very knowledgeable. So just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at, Evandro, before you got on, we were just talking about, obviously, given the situation that we're in now, that we're kind of facing regarding law enforcement, it's tough for us to ignore, what happened in Minneapolis, and we were looking to kind of use this as a platform to stress the importance of having properly trained law enforcement officers on the street, and we thought of you right away, because who better than someone who's traveled the country, who's been exposed to cops all over the country and had the opportunity to positively impact these cops. So just to kind of get your thoughts on the importance of that and share some of your experience.
Michael, I just appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you opening the window for my voice to impact more people. And that is the basis of what we do, right? We go somewhere, we provide such an amazing everything we have, giving jiu-jitsu, martial arts, education, or discussions, whatever it is that we can offer, so people get impacted in a positive way. And then, I'm very honored that I pop up in our memory when the subject arises. So that is the privilege itself, and I appreciate that.
Is there, when you guys are doing a course and you have law enforcement officers who have no jiu-jitsu background whatsoever, what is that process like for them, and what's that like for you guys as the instructors?
Great question, Justin. I can confidently say that the Gracie Survival Tactics is mainly focused on officers that have no experience, because we know that the masses of law enforcement officers, they don't train jiu-jitsu as a regular hobby at the jiu-jitsu schools, and that is okay. We're not mad at that. It's just the reality. There's only so much jiu-jitsu schools out there, and there's also so much interest from these officers to go to jiu-jitsu school, especially Justin, when their experience in martial arts maybe not be the most pleasant one. Because given my history, I came from Brazil. Mike mentioned that a little bit, but I came from Brazil and I competed in Brazil, training in Brazil, and then I competed all over the world. But the default, if I can say, of martial arts training in jiu-jitsu is very much like a war. It's very much like, let's grapple and the toughest will survive, you see? And the beauty of that, I want to say, is that only the toughest will survive. And if you become a black belt or a purple belt, you're going to be a little animal, you understand?
Yeah,
Like, it's going to be
absolutely.
tough to deal with you. Male or female, it doesn't matter. It's just like,
Yeah.
very effective. Now, the downside of that is that most people would shy away from the process. You see? And that could be, regardless of the profession, could be because the person is a doctor or a lawyer or law enforcement, doesn't matter. Because the entry level for most people, it's a little higher than they feel comfortable with. So once you approach that, once you see that reality, Justin, you see like this, oh, the cops should be tougher. They should be, willing to train harder and go through the jiu-jitsu journey. And that approach is very much creates a separation, right? Because who am I to say that person should leave work, come here, get beat up, and go back home and come back the next day? You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
There are some people that do that. There are like an audience for that, like 5% of people that endure that. I am one of them. In Brazil, the training was crazy, and I don't know why I endured and I survived. You see, I became good on the other side. But like 95% of my friends, they quit. They got a broken knee, broken rib, neck, messed up, but they stopped training at blue belt. You see?
Yeah.
So back to my point and back to your question, the entry door for Gracie Survival Tactics is it's the lowest possible. Now, the cool thing about that even though we treat the person as they never trained jiu-jitsu before, and Mike experienced there, it's very welcoming for the beginner. It's also very advanced for the practitioner. We
Sure.
have black belts, brown belts that come to your class and like, oh my gosh, I learned so much. It's so that is the gift that being part of an organization like Gracie University allow us to do, because it's so much time training and teaching, Justin, that we can speak. So instead of speaking only to the good guys or only to the beginners, we speak so broad
Sure.
that we can get everyone, and the beginner feels welcome, the advanced guys feels challenged, you see? So that is what we try to do, and give them a good introduction. And they also can achieve a certain level of proficiency in 1 week. And yes, I know that it's not ideal. We'd like to be lifetime practitioners. But nonetheless, the result that we have after 5 days of training is one to be experienced. So,
For
and
sure.
I think there's something to be said of, you have this structured program in place. And I think one of the great things that, you see is when there's a highly publicized incident, you have Henner on there, and you guys are sponsoring cops to come out, and you're offering them the experience to try and, increase their training and their knowledge to kind of help them on the street. But I think it goes the other way too. So, I'm sure it affects you guys when you see something like what happened in Minnesota, right? Especially all the time and effort that you put into properly training cops, and then you see, a guy like that who's doing something that you would never ever train somebody to do. That it has to affect you guys as well from that standpoint.
it has an impact on the profession that we share, right? Just kind of the influence, like you're saying, there's so much time training. We see the training be deployed in a non-optimal way that does affect us. Also has an effect on the individual, the human being that we are. It's just such a tragic moment that there's impossible not to empathize with it. And it's the kind of thing that inspires us to keep going. You see, it's just to keep moving. And I know that even though we train like so many officers throughout the year, we have like 2 GSTs a month. 100 officers after GST is just so much that it's just not enough. The goal is to have Gracie Survival Tactics in every department, or Jiu Jitsu in every department. You see, I'm not even biased that people need to learn from me. That is not the mission. The mission is Jiu Jitsu has to be accessible to cops, and law enforcement officer has to have more money and time being deployed so they can train hand-to-hand combat. That is the mission. Now, we happen to be leading the movement of defensive tactics within law enforcement, so that's why we talk about GST. But the mission is bigger than that. You see, that's why I feel it's so easy for me to talk about, because as long as officers feel empowered and capable of diffusing situations in the street in a less violent way, we are all winning. Doesn't matter who is teaching them, as long as we're on the path, we're on the path.
And you bring up the topic of teaching, and I was telling Justin last week, I think one of the most impressive parts of the GST program is that you're not just teaching these officers techniques, you're teaching them how to teach it, right? So you're setting a standard of how they're going to go back to their departments. Like, you want to have it, you kind of preach consistency by teaching these techniques. I remember the first class that I went to when, we were going over the body parts, the hand, the fingers, and I'm thinking to myself, how does this even, I'm like, how does this even play into us teaching it? But then you tie it all together, and we leave those courses, prepared to teach, that standard to our officers. So I think that's one of the most impressive things. It's not just techniques; it's the teaching methods that you kind of take away from.
Yeah, people often tell us that because they don't even expect, right, Mike? I don't know your experience individually, but like, people are talking about you, telling you on how to teach. You're not even expecting that; just expecting the physicalities. But then it's a beautiful surprise. The feedback that we get is just amazing. And like you said, it's just to keep the continuity and the exponential effect of the delivery of jiu-jitsu. Instead of me teaching you what you do and just trusting that you yourself, or who knows, whatever, any student will teach however they want, we separate a little bit of time, and then we give them teaching methodologies that the Gracie family has been utilizing for more than 100 years. And they're so effective, and they gather that information, and defensive tactics instructors go back to the department and influence more cops, and keep the ball rolling.
When you have new students come in, is there a pattern of a lot of people make the same mistake, something you have to correct right away for a lot of the students?
Good question. I would say that there is an answer for that, and I'm going to answer, but it's not reserved to law enforcement beginners. It's reserved to human beings that don't know how to fight jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. You see? Sure. Because even though jiu-jitsu is so popular and people know jiu-jitsu, the number one thing that people do is that they fight too much, they spend more energy than necessary, and they get exhausted quickly.
Exactly.
That would be the number one. They have a certain urgency, right? Because here's the deal. If I grab a civilian from the street and I place them on the floor, and I mount on top of them, which means that I put two of my legs around their waist, like a seatbelt right here, and I go on top of them. What do you think that they're going to do, Justin?
Well, just from rolling with enough spazzy white belts in my day, they're going to freak out until they exhaust themselves.
That's what they're going to do. They're going to freak out, and they're going to burn everything trying to get out. If the person has a certain physicality and they can succeed, meaning get out, then great. If not, then they're going to be as good as being knocked out. You see, because exhaustion, being knocked out, they're brothers. You see, they're the same, like, they're close. So that's the number one. And officers, what happened is that they have that instinct, and they will teach techniques on how to survive and how to maintain energy on the bottom of the fight, how to neutralize the fight, even though you are on a advantageous position. Then what happens is that we go to the top position, and then once we are on top of the fight, controlling the fight, what do you think that's the number one behavior that people do, Justin?
As the person on top?
Yes. Imagine that you escape the bottom position, and now you're on top, on the mount on them.
Well, I would like to say that the average person is not going to start punching people in the face, but I have a feeling that the answer is people get excited, they're on top with adrenaline, and punches start happening.
Yes, civilians primarily, they would punch. Law enforcement, the answer is not punching as much, but the similarity between them is to overwhelm and to dominate. for example, if a civilian mount a stranger, they want to punch, they want to strike, they want to finish the fight. And finishing the fight for law enforcement is handcuffing, which I respect.
Sure.
The suspect must be in handcuffs inside the car, back to jail. But what we realized, to answer your question, is that when you are in a superior position, if your goal is to move forward, I have less control over what is happening. So if I'm trying to punch, I'm not focused on base. I can be pushed off.
Sure.
If I'm focused on punch, I can hurt my hand. I can overhurt the person.
Sure.
They're heading backward. You see, no one wants that, right? Not civilians, nor law enforcement. So there's a lot that I'm doing, that I'm escalating the fight. If I am law enforcement and I am trying to handcuff them on the first 3 seconds that I find myself on top, chances are that might create more chaos than the officer is equipped to deal with. So what do we tell them? We tell the escalation. Once you find yourself in a position of superiority, the goal is not to handcuff right now. The goal is to establish control and establish exhaustion on the suspect. Because, like you said before, 99% of people will spaz out and try to escape. If that is human nature, knowing that we have an advantage. Anyone that I mount anywhere, they're going to try to escape, and they're only going to stop when they get tired. So my question is, do you want to handcuff me on the first 2 seconds of a fight, or after 100 seconds?
Yeah, I'd like you to be nice and tired, especially me versus you right now. I'd like you especially to be very, very tired. But as a law enforcement officer, a tired person to handcuff is obviously going to be preferred.
The 100-second rule, right, Evandro? The 100-second rule.
But here's the challenge. One person only can stay 100 seconds in the fight comfortably if they know techniques. If the person doesn't know any technique, it's ludicrous to ask them to stay longer in a fight, because the norm in society is what? Finish the fight as quick as you can. You see? Right. That's what we do in the course. We give them tools so they can survive longer in a fight, so they can diffuse the violence, and then eventually execute the arrest procedure when the time feels right, and with less violence possible, which is, what we discuss a lot as well.
They do that a lot too. So you address a lot of different scenarios there. So you address, handcuffing one-on-one, you address a 2-man takedown. So you're putting these law enforcement officers in different situations to try and, prepare them for whatever may come up. You incorporate a practical aspect of it as well. So you're teaching these guys the techniques, and then at the end of the class, you'll have them do the wall drill where you're putting them into where you're putting what you taught that day into practice, right? So I think that kind of brings them in even more, because now they're saying it like, this works. You know what I mean? This is effective.
The way that the class is structured is that we have the techniques that happen the most, right? We have Gracie Combative, which is the base of this curriculum, and you have 36 techniques that they happen in street fights all the time. And then what we did is that we tweaked those 36 techniques to scenarios that happen with law enforcement all the time. And the way that we do it is that we do the 3 first days. It's only learning techniques, all the physicality of the techniques, practicing and drilling. And while we're learning them during the days, we also do what we were mentioning right there, Mike, which is the freestyle fight simulation drill. Actually, not the freestyle, fight simulation drill, which is we put techniques in an order. So I do technique 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you guys do a little fight simulation on those 4 techniques, and then we do another fight simulation with technique 5, 6, and 7. And then 8, 9, and 10. You see? So we create these micro scenarios, if I can say, so they can be in a flow of a fight instead of learning each technique individually. And then on the 4th day, we learn the teaching methodologies that we mentioned before. It's a full day of teaching, practicing, and grappling. And on the last day, we do not only duty belt drills, so they can have a feeling on how the techniques work with the duty belt on, which is very important. But also we do the freestyle fight simulation drill, which is, I tell the students like this, guys, we've been training for 4 days already. On this last day, one person will attack the other with any one of the main behaviors that we discussed this week. And then the officer will figure it out how to defend, utilize the techniques that we've learned. And the result is impressive, because it's so it's the stairs, right? It's almost like because that was step by step before, now they can go up and down the stairs. Instead of me just saying, hey guys, grapple, and these are the moves. No, every step is purposeful. Every fight simulation drill that we do is purposeful. Every, break is purposeful. We have everything structured because, that's what we've been doing forever. So that is the flavor of the whole class.
Obviously, jiu-jitsu is becoming, a much more popular sport in the United States. A lot more students are training. Has that impacted the curriculum of your course over the years? Are you making adjustments to the curriculum based on there are more people who are training jiu-jitsu? And how's that impacting what you guys do?
Great question. The answer is yes, 100%. Every GST is better than the one before. Not only because of the techniques that get shared with law enforcement officers, scenarios, or little tweaks. We call it a live curriculum, right? Everything that we learn, we absorb and we implement in the next one. Regarding techniques, we are always open for new techniques or new scenarios that are not being covered in GST. We have 2 levels, right? Mike mentioned. We have level 1, it's more focused on officer independence, one person being able to defend themselves. And then we have GST level 2, which is more focused on interdependency, which is 2-man takedown, vehicle extractions, more advanced techniques that 2 people can cooperate with each other. As well, some jiu-jitsu counters, how to defend a vascular neck restraint, how to defend guillotine choke, right, the front headlock neck restraint. So that would be the more advanced level 2. So even though we have this open window, all I want is to learn a technique that is better than the technique I'm teaching. You see? So that is my approach in the class. Now, it rarely happens because we've been doing that forever. You see, we've been doing that for a long time. And then the curriculum has been growing so much that now we land in a place just in that I feel very comfortable to say, guys, this course, if not level 1, level 2, will cover, 95, 99% of all scenarios. Now, even if it does, sometimes they raise their hand and they ask a question about a scenario that is not on the course. Then we just do a extracurricular activity over there, and we just kind of teach and talk and discuss, and we all benefit from. But 100%, it has to be an open door because I'm not here to tell officers what to do. You see, officers are out there defending society, dealing with real scenarios, real people, real fights. And if they have a concern or a question, it's the priority. Now, we have a lot of experience with grappling and manipulating body mechanics and timing of a fight. So they respect us for that mastery, and we respect them for that mastery that they have. And with that cooperation, we look eye to eye, and there's no imposing, there's no challenging, there's just cooperation. And the result is more people training. Just
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's always the goal, right? More people training.
More people training, more people enjoying and spreading. Yes, that's the mission.
And I would imagine when you're teaching, obviously you're teaching, defensive tactics for the officer's sake, but you're also teaching in a way that these interactions with the public are handled humanely as well, where it's not a fight. The officer has the responsibility to themselves, but also to the person they're interacting with.
100%. This is so interesting because, tell me what you guys think about this. Like, if I tell the officer to use less violence, if I go to the officer and say, officer, when you're on top of the fight, use less violence. Some people might think that I'm protecting the suspect.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm saying, hey, officer, don't punch. Don't crank their arm too much. Don't wrap their neck too tight. Just use minimum force. And I am protecting the suspect. Now, I'm also protecting the officer by using less violence on the suspect. Because the behavior in which, if someone, let's assume we have a suspect that they did something wrong, and it has to be taken back into custody, and he's laying down on the floor, he doesn't want to go back, and the officer is holding them down with no violent strategies, no cranking on the neck, no twisting, no breaking the shoulder, nothing, just mount control, establishing control, keeping both people safe. Chances are that suspect will be more willing to cooperate. And both of them don't need to go to extreme of violence in order to find a solution, you see? So my point is that by this officer protecting the suspect, he's protecting the suspect and also protecting themselves against a violent response that the suspect would have towards a violent response that the officer is having. You see? Now, there are some cases that we know that the profession is so dangerous, so respectable, right? It doesn't matter what the officer do, the suspect will be aggressive and he's gonna fight until no matter what. And they might be on some kind of drugs or entorpecents or who knows what people are putting inside their body. But for most of the time, less violent from my side, we protect them, and as a return, we protect the officers. So that is the base of the program as well. You're right.
I feel jealous. You know, Mike's been able to come to classes and to train with you, and I'm just a lowly civilian over here who just likes to heel hook people. I don't get to do it. I'm sorry?
How long have you been training for?
I think I'm going on 9 years now.
Yeah, we started a little
brown belt.
Brown belt.
Yeah, both of us.
Good, amazing, Max brown belt too. That's great.
Yeah, it's the coronavirus and not being able to train, and it's for the best. I understand. I'm not saying that we should be training.
We're going stir crazy. We're going stir crazy. You know, I was unsure of it going in because having trained for so long, and you know, I didn't know like what I was kind of getting into. But leaving there, it's obvious that this is the most practical training that you can have as a cop, and you know, anybody would be lucky to go there. You know, and the instruction's top notch, the techniques are top notch. You know, and you know, from the law enforcement community, we can't thank you enough, you know, for dedicating your time and everything to kind of improving things on our end. You know,
thank you, bro. It's a pleasure, and it's you as a jiu-jitsu practitioner coming and having that recognition as a brown belt. It's priceless. It's amazing, and that's the feedback that you get from people that are brand new as well. So you know what, Mike? I think that if you have your intent on the right place and you put the hard work behind, it's not easy to become a black belt.
right?
It's not easy to become an enforcement. It's not easy to travel all over the country sharing jiu-jitsu. You see what I'm saying? But if you put the hard work and have good intention, only good things come out of it. That's my perception.
We were talking a little bit before you came on about, you know, this, you know, encouraging cops to train. This could be the vehicle, you know, jiu-jitsu could be the vehicle to change, you know, putting cops on the street with the proper training can, you know, even if it prevents one incident like the one that happened in Minnesota, that's a win. You know, even if we alter the mindset of one cop and we avoid the incident like we had in Minnesota, that's a win.
Yeah, and I like your approach, that the humility that you're saying that even one person would be enough.
Right.
And even though I agree with you, even what we know about jiu-jitsu and the people that graduate from our program, jiu-jitsu is so much the answer that it would be much more than that. If all officers had a little bit of maybe 6 months of training or a blue belt in their waist, it will be much more than one. And we know that because we have inside information because we train jiu-jitsu.
Absolutely.
But I speak that not by bragging of jiu-jitsu, say, yeah, jiu-jitsu is the answer, but just with my heart open saying, guys, if you don't train jiu-jitsu, go train. And if you have an opportunity to do a Gracie Survival Tactics or host a GST close to you, once this COVID nightmare goes back to normal, you host it, and the changes are not only immediate, but they're last longing. You see, they last long.
For sure. Well, Evandro, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us tonight. You gave us some real great insight, and it's always good to get more insight from a person in your position who's actually out there with these guys teaching. So thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you so much, man.
I appreciate you guys. You guys go in peace, and if anything, let me know, okay?
Evandro, before we go, let everyone know where they can find you on the internet, where, you know, what you have coming up next, what resources are out there for people to find you.
Amazing. So graceuniversity.com is where you're going to find any information about our programs, our curriculum. We have jiu-jitsu for 4-year-olds until law enforcement, man, woman, anything we have in Gracie University. And you're going to find ways to open a certified training school, how to host a GST, how to do the online courses that we have at Gracie University. Right now, we're starting to offer Zoom classes because of this COVID. Edon Henner and myself and other head instructors on the Gracie University, we're doing Zoom classes, which we call solo jiu-jitsu. which is so cool. Because in jiu-jitsu, we really feel that we have to have another person. And yes, it is amazing, and that's one of the amazing things. But we just discovered a way to do by ourselves. And it's almost like, when Henry uses an analogy very well, which is when people learn how to surf, they take the board on the sand and they keep doing some pop-ups, right? By themselves with no water, just them and the board. And that's what basically we are doing with the 1,000 techniques that we have in jiu-jitsu. So people practice the small portion of it, and then next thing they get a little partner or a little dummy, and then they're doing the moves better. You see? So we're doing that Zoom classes as well. You have my social media, Facebook or Instagram, which is Evandro Skill A. My name, Evandro, the word skill and the letter A. You can find me there. Hit me up for anything at any time. And Gracie Survival Tactics. Let's go to the next GST. If you don't host one, you just be part of one, and we keep the mission going, guys. And before one more thing, if I may, just the appreciation that I have towards Justin and Mike for not only reaching out, but you having this podcast and spreading the message on this force of education. And this, it's almost like we have a certain answer that we love to share, right? And you guys are doing that, because I say, I don't know if Mike remember, but in class I have this analogy that I make with old school, back in the days, the samurais in Japan. They would be the police. I don't know if the people that are listening to us knew that, but the police would be the samurais, and they would be responsible for keeping the society safe, and they would also be withholding the martial arts training, right? So it only makes sense that the martial arts and the people that defend society are the same person. Now, what happened with time in modern civilization is that we have skillful martial artists, brown belts, black belts, or MMA fighters, and we have law enforcement separated from that training. You see? Well, there's nothing wrong with that, right? The free will and the freedom of this country and the planet Earth allows people to do whatever they want with the information. And we even train UFC fighters ourselves and MMA fighters, and there's nothing wrong with that. To fighting for entertainment. Now, it's interesting that people like you guys that are skilled in martial arts, and Mike is a law enforcement as well, we just kind of bringing these two forces together, right? And that's what the final goal is. And you guys are doing that, and I appreciate you guys for doing that, because every podcast is one more person that is closer from the martial art training with the people that need it the most, right? So I appreciate you guys for that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Evandro.
We really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
I might have to put out a petition to have you replace Mike as the co-host of this show. So if I get too many signatures, on next season.
I'll do some more appearances. Don't take him out. I come in. I join you anytime you guys want.
Don't steal my job, Evandro. Don't steal. See you.
All the love, guys. Ciao.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. Huge thanks to Evandro Nunes for coming on the show and dropping some knowledge about GST and the Gracie Combatives program. Be sure to give him a follow on Instagram on the handle that he gave out. You can follow our podcast at _jujitsu_podcast. You can follow me at M_Callahan106.
You can also follow me at Justin Lesko, all one word. And if you prefer the video version of the podcast or the interview we did with Evandro, you go to YouTube and just search that Jiu Jitsu podcast. You come right up for that as well. This is where you say thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.